Hello, everyone. I'm Jim Garrison. I want to welcome you to this session of Humanity Rising, where we're going to explore the relationship between Platonic philosophy and spirituality and some of the contemporary challenges of our time and developments with artificial intelligence. And I must say, this conversation and session today brings particular satisfaction to me because, as you all know, I'm a Grecophile and believe that not much of interest in philosophy has been written since Plato. It was Alfred North Whitehead, in fact, about 100 years ago, a process philosopher in the United States and the UK, who said that all philosophy since Plato for the last 2,500 years is simply a footnote on Plato. And I thought I would just take a moment as we begin to tell you how I encountered Plato. I was 18 years old. I had been summoned by the US government to take a physical to see if I was healthy enough to go kill people in Vietnam. At those days, you had to register for the draft because the draft was in place. And I dutifully registered, but when I was told that I had to go take a physical, I refused. And this created extraordinary consternation and debate. My father was a very conservative Republican. He believed that we had to fight the communists at all costs. So for his son to refuse the draft was a traumatic experience for both of us, I would say. And but I refused. And then a second letter came about 6 weeks later saying, "Dear Mr. Garrison, you are guilty potentially of 2 felony counts. If you're found guilty and you refuse to take your physical, you could lose your passport for the rest of your life and not be able to travel outside the United States. And you may face upwards of a $10,000 fine and possible jail time." So my father and the family said to me, "Well, of course you've got to do it now." And I said, "No, I'm not going to do it. No government is going to examine my body to see if I'm healthy enough to go kill people. That just doesn't compute in any moral framework that I know." And my father banished me to my room with loud shouts and tears from my sisters. That life as they knew it was coming to an end. I sat on the bed, completely dejected. And then I looked over and there was my bookshelf. And I just reached over without looking and picked up a book. I don't know why I did it. And what I picked up was a book on Plato's dialogues. And I opened it up. And it fell to the Apology, which is the trial of Socrates and his refusal to bend to the Athenian regime on charges about corrupting the youth of his day. And as I sat there listening to his words, his defense, his rationalization, I began to weep. Not only for what the state does for good people, but that in my deepest despair, clinging on to only that which in my heart was burning with certitude, I'd reached for a book, opened it up, and there was Plato. And I've been a lover of Plato ever since. I agree with Whitehead. So thank you, everyone, for joining us here on Humanity Rising. We are very privileged today to have Danielle Lane with us. She's a professor of philosophy at Gonzaga University in California. She's a Platonist. She's written many articles and books on Platonic philosophy. And I want to welcome Professor Lane to Humanity Rising. She'll be telling us more about her philosophical orientation, and then we'll dialogue for the balance of the time, and then she'll join the after chat. But Danielle, welcome to Humanity Rising.
Thank you, Jim. It's a wonderful pleasure to be here. I'm just thrilled by the opportunity to talk with you and your community today about Plato, about Khora, about the future and the technologies that we are creating as a community. So just a good welcome. Thank you. I appreciate it. All right. Well, yes. So Jim was gracious in his introduction and this beautiful story about the serendipity of reaching for a book in your moments of despair, and then it being the very thing that enlightens you, that helps wake you up to your power, to say no, to take big risks, to dream big, so on and so forth, because that for me is one of the most important things about what it means to be a Platonist, is that those weird small moments, right? Like that even in your despair, even in your suffering, there's this beautiful opportunity or kernel of some je ne sais quoi that is going to explode into an entire way of life, that's going to create and allow you to see that at the end, right, all of it is reaching towards something beautiful, right? And that we can conduct a life that allows for that beauty to just shimmer on everything, even when it's the darkest of nights, even when it's the coldest of winds. That Platonism and what it means to be a Platonist is to see and to search for all of that beauty and goodness. And I say all of this before I start my talk about Khora, because I think it's the fundamental condition for the very dreams that I'm having these days with regards to, the future. Because I'm not just a philosophy professor. I'm not just a Platonist who writes articles and books and whatnot. I'm also the CEO of a production company called Palinode Productions, and we are developing a piece of tech called Khora, which, if you are a Platonist, you know is the name of the feminine principle in the Timaeus, which is the cosmology that Plato advances, wherein which the fundamental principles that are conducting the creation of the cosmos are, of course, the demiurge, who is looking at the intelligible living being, but also Khora, the receptacle, which is grasping the forms and grasping the ideas and taking and receiving them. But since she's the principle of motion, right, she's that which, moves those ideas, makes them living, gives them life, makes them breathe, so to speak. If you remember the etymology of Khora, it doesn't just mean abode or place, but also a kind of dancer, right? Where she's allowing us to dance, so to speak, through this world and through creation and, that which always becomes. And so that again, prelude to what it is that I'm building. So I'm going to go ahead and put up the slideshow. Let's see if I can do this. All right, share. All right. All right, so as a professor who works in a university, for a long time, I've seen some of the problems of what it means to be part of the academic world, right? Where in which academia kind of promotes this kind of draining of education into merely job prep. And so I started becoming disenchanted about what universities are asking professors to do, right? Simply get students ready for the, market economy, make sure that they have the skills that will allow them to get jobs, so on and so forth. And so you see within the university this kind of slow draining of the idea that education is supposed to be a formation of the soul or the formation of individuals who have the skills, but also the spirit of being able to reach for what the Greeks call eudaimonia, or human flourishing. No longer is the university such a place. That's to dream big. That's to be naive. That's to fail, and recognizing that the human condition is one in which all we are cogs in the machine. And so that spirit started to like grate at me. But I said, oh, I'm going to keep doing this simply because the students make things, amazing. That in the classroom, who cares about the ideologies that are shaping the world of the university? What matters is, giving that impassioned lecture, and that student, maybe one, maybe two, maybe the whole class, can still go out into the world and remember, say, Nietzsche or Plato or Aristotle, and how it is that they can transform every moment of your day. But unfortunately, in the last few years, with the emergence of various different technologies, slowly but surely, even the students are coming to class now as if they've already been consumed by this ideology of nihilism, if I'm going to be perfectly frank. And they're no longer, not always, like there are plenty of great students who come in still with that, I want to learn spirit. However, a vast majority of them are slipping into a way of relating to technology where they don't think they have to engage. They don't have to work. And if you ask them to, think deeply or critically, they're just, yeah, they're not interested, right? And so I started to think about the importance of reintegrating philosophy into our pop culture, into the mass culture. And I started creating, popular philosophy videos, things like this. But at the end of the day, I realized that it's not necessarily just about creating popular videos, creating accessible content, but it's about the very way that the internet and our technologies have been constructed and implemented in our world. And so I thought, hey, look, I'm a Platonist. Nothing is neither good nor bad in and of itself, right? It's the way we create things, and it's the way we implement things, and it's the telos, or the goals that we have in the creation of things. And so basically, I'm about to talk to you about a different form of AI and what I am calling a search engine done otherwise. Okay, so welcome. I'm dreaming big in the age of consumption, or I'm dreaming romantically in this world. And so here we go. So here I've basically already given you an idea of what this quote that I have up here. It's basically that we are now in a kind of community as a global scale in which people are running off the fuel of dopamine, that now we just scroll. We're like just feed that appetite. Feed, as what Plato would say in book 9 of the Republic, that beast part of ourselves, right? That we are nothing but our appetites and our desires, and so let's just create products that feed that, and let's make that grow bigger and bigger. And I'm like, no. Like, we have other parts of what it means to be human besides just our desires. And our desires don't just have to be at the service of our gut and our basest instincts. But no, our desires can grow into a thematic, impassioned, beautiful warrior that can, in fact, think about the strategies of creating the conditions for a beautiful world. That there's more. But the problem is that the way that we're getting our fuel is simply feeding that base, right? And as I said already before, our education systems are failing with regards to providing a way that we can relate to ourselves as human beings, to ourselves as part of nature, to ourselves as people in relationships with our families, our friends, our students, our elders, so on and so forth. We're not able, right, to even think within the space of academia of the possibility of things being otherwise, when that's the very point of academia, is to allow for people to read and think critically in a way that they can see that they participate in the creation of ever-changing and new dynamic ways of living. So many of us are caught by social media into this world of isolation, this world of polarization, right? Where as if, oh, those are the bad guys. I know they're the bad guys. And so I reject, or I cancel, or I hate. And I'm happy to keep doing that because I can mindlessly scroll and not see the repercussions of that particular ideology, reinforced constantly by the way we think about, how we get our information, how we get knowledge, so on and so forth. All right. Okay. So what is Khora? All right. So Khora is a search engine done otherwise, but it's also a social media philosophy platform. What she is like when you, let me back up. How many times have you, and be honest with yourself, in the middle of the night or, just randomly in the middle of the day, wanted an answer to a big question, right? Like, what is the meaning of life? Who am I? What is it that I actually believe? All of those bigger questions. And you just humorously decide to, type that into Google. What is the meaning of life? And of course, Google's going to give you a list of all sorts of various different things that will probably be not useful, not helpful. It definitely won't direct you something like Ubiquity University. It will just not, if so, it would be on page 25. And by the time you got there, you would be so drained and tired that you would probably close the computer and go to your TV and watch some Netflix. And so what if there's a platform, an alternative to Google, where you can type in what is the meaning of life, and Khora will explode and give you a cosmic brain of ideas. So first off, not a discursive list that just, you pick things and rectangles, but no, you see all of the ideas and content that are related to the idea of meaning. So you get an explosion of content created and uploaded by users. So kind of social media, open source, where everybody is contributing various different pieces of content on, say, that question of meaning. And so that what happens is that you see all that content visually, so that even the obscure article or the obscure podcast or the esoteric is still visually there. So that way the esoteric mind can go to that thing over there that's obscure, versus, the analytic mind might want the stuff that's immediately evidently obvious, to helping you understand the question that you have asked. Because the very first thing that Khora will do is basically help you understand your own beliefs, right? So that I believe that the world is all about love. And I just don't understand why, right? And so I say that to Khora, and she explodes with various different pieces of content, maybe Plato's Symposium or Audre Lorde's and the Erotic, or maybe I'm an 18-year-old kid and I can only really understand and reinforce that belief via watching, a Little Nas Montero, right? But the point is that then I'll take Little Nas's Montero and go in further, and slowly but surely she's going to give me content that I will be able to understand, because Khora's basic function is to start learning how it is that you remain curious. So instead of social media algorithms that are learning about you in order to turn you into a commodity, in order to get you to consume, here, what if I'm not making an algorithm that's about keeping you in a demographic so that I can sell your data? What if Khora's learning how you learn to keep you curious, right? What if that's the telos? What if the coders are not just creating spaghetti code for the sake of selling your data or the sake of keeping you addicted, but no, for the sake of turning you and helping you rather than selling you or consuming you. And so here, designing a code at the very base, already to be about that impossible thing of actually creating a community versus a commodity. In any case, as she's learning how you learn, right? She's going to give you the content that will keep you curious and slowly but surely help you understand yourself better. But as a good philosopher should, understanding yourself better also comes with understanding the opposing point of view. And so since Khora's learning how you learn, right, she's slowly but surely going to give you content, right? And keep in mind, you're constantly choosing, right? Like, she's not just going to give you, like it is on the TikTok, what she thinks you need, right? She's always going to give you that freedom to choose to go down a different rabbit hole, but with the hope that slowly but surely you get the content that will allow you, in my case, to see, oh, it's possible that love is a hormonal bodily condition. But then now I've had that idea. And so now Khora is going to help me try not just to hold that opposing point of view as if, well, I guess I have to reject that because it doesn't jive with this. No, but to be able to go down and see the content that will allow you to think about how you can hold those seemingly paradoxical positions via thinking about the body-soul problem, or, the idea of transcendence being imminently connected to being embodied, so on and so forth. And that all of this, right, is going to be part of a community of people who know that they are part of helping AI. Because remember, Khora is not going to be a generative AI. She's simply going to, connect ideas in a certain kind of way so that you can do the work of helping other people within the community to think differently, so that what this particular AI will do is basically ask for your help so that she can learn how to help people turn in different directions, to be able to help people think about not just their own viewpoints, but also how those viewpoints relate and can be connected to what we seemingly think is the complete opposite. So basically, that's the overall idea. There's so many things that I could tell you about the details and the nitty gritty, but that's the vision. That's the big dream. That's the romantic spirit. All right. So I'm just going to give you a quick look at her. All right, here we go. So again, that's just the opening page. So here you can see this is our development page, but the idea is that all the content, right, will be like this. It'll be moving in various different ways, and that what users will do is connect each node, is what we're calling, to other nodes. And nodes are these big ideas, and that content is supposed to be connected so that there's no liking on Quora, but rather what you will do is connect ideas in this global tapestry of content, so that you watch Little Nas's Montero and you think the big idea that love is the central concept. And so you'll be connecting that to the idea, and then that idea will be connected to thousands of other pieces of content, and that each of us as users on Quora see and recognize that what we're supposed to be doing is connecting principles and content, and creating content that allows other people to connect ideas. And so that if you see that kid over there is having trouble understanding the body-mind problem, but you know that you can explain it well in a video, or you know as an artist that there's a painting that you could create that might inspire that kid to understand better the disjunct between the body and soul, that you're giving Cora the content that she can use to help that 18-year-old kid having trouble with that particular idea, because they are a visual learner, or at least at that time of the day, they're a visual learner. They prefer that over others. I've learned that when it comes to explaining and talking about Quora, that it's best to just enter into a conversation. And so I'm going to close there for now, but hopefully this will just lead to a good conversation.
Thank you, Danielle. I certainly hope that Quora is as successful as your ambitions are. What the world needs, as you pointed out, is community, not commodity. And that's very important. Before we jump into the discussion, there was a number of people that pointed out that I didn't finish my story about reaching out to Plato in my duress as an 18-year-old. So I thought I would just quickly do that. That I have a number of issues that I'd like to take up with you for the balance of the time. What happened, everyone, was that after I sat on the bed for a while and took in the enormity of what was just happening, I just put the book down, marched out to the living room, and announced to the family that my decision was non-negotiable, and that simply was the way it is. And then consternation subsided, and what turned out was that I went off to university, and the US government and the Army lost my file in their system. So after taking this stand, I ended up not having to pay any penalty because they lost track of the plot. And I went happily to college. And then when I was in my junior year, this was like 3 or 4 years later, I received a letter saying that I had been reclassified. I think it was 1H or something, that I was a student and therefore all was well. So I was one of those extraordinary experiences where I took a stand, ultimately not knowing, but as life then transpired, I was blessed with bureaucratic incompetence and was spared the penalties of my violations of law. So that's the story, but it really contributed to changing my life. I became an active opponent to the Vietnam War, organized all kinds of protests at the University of Santa Clara, burned my draft card at UC Berkeley, actually. And I went on from there. But Danielle, let's talk a little bit more. I'd like to find out how you yourself discovered Plato,
Mm,
because as you're pointing out, the entire educational system mitigates against any foundational character building learning. It's all
mhm,
about knowledge, it's about technical skills, it's about uh, commercial viability in the marketplace, not the way education was certainly envisioned by Plato. But how did you discover Plato?
yeah. Oh goodness. Such a strange and wandering, I like to say planetary because the word for planet means to wander, wandering story. Uh, the short version, I guess, is that I was not the kind of person who should have become an academic or a professor. I was a lost teenager, recovering from a very strange upbringing, and I had some weird je ne sais quoi, like there's that something that said, no, there has to be more than working in bars and being a waiter and, the hustle and grind of, let's get married or whatever it might be. You have to be a beautiful woman. You have to do all these things. And that's life, right? All life is, yeah, be good looking and get a job and maybe get married and maybe have kids, like this kind of script laid out for you. And I just didn't, I I wanted an adventure. I wanted something crazy, something idiosyncratic. And I wouldn't have been able to put it that way because even though I was really good at getting the right kinds of grades, I hadn't. And I had read some philosophy. In fact, my gateway drug was Nietzsche, and the Thus Spoke Zarathustra. But it really hadn't it entered into my soul as like real, like as a foundational thing that would drive and create a meaningful life. So I was just, I don't know, what is the word? Grasping at random various different things and just to have that big adventure. And so I decided to randomly just go to grad school in Europe, in Belgium, just so I can, hop around and play in Europe and meet as many people as I could, but at the same time be responsible and get another degree in philosophy. So, of course, I had these beautiful libraries available to me in Belgium. And I was always struck, even back then, how so many people think they know something or are pretending to be wise or smart, and that they too didn't know what they were talking about. And so you said the apology was one of your gateway drugs into to Plato, and it certainly was for me because I became obsessed with this value of ignorance and recognizing your ignorance, and that Socrates seemed to see that, right? I didn't read Socrates as being ironic when he said he did not know, right? I was like, no, this is the first honest man that I am encountering. This, like, no, I can somehow both know and not know at the same time. I know that there's beauty and the good and truth. I know that a circle is that figure upon which every point on the periphery is equidistant to the center. But I also don't know that, right? I also need to recognize that my ignorance is a source for my curiosity. It's my fuel to overcome and see that, oh, even though I don't know what a circle is, I can also know some things. And I can also come up with better and uniquer or stranger definitions of the circle. I can look at the circle and see that, oh, wait, maybe my perspective makes me think that it's a two-dimensional object. But if I look at it differently, it suddenly becomes a cone or a cone or cylinder, depending upon how I look at it, right? And it doesn't mean that I was an idiot for thinking it was a circle. No, I needed to look at it differently. I needed to expand. I needed to see So Plato constantly is reminding us of the good of what he calls noithoi, bastard reasoning, right? Of thinking not in just that analytic mind, right? But recognizing that the male and female principles in the Republic, the male and female guardians, right? That the masculine in the Republic is, in fact, that analytic, logical, dogmatic thinking, that knowing, and then that feminine or that choratic element, right? That also needs to be ruling in the mind, so to speak, is absolutely necessary because that's the kind of space of confusion, or what Socrates calls aporia, that we need in order to start imagining different ways of understanding, right? That yes, those ways of understanding, they ruled, they worked, in the past, various different concepts and ideas like, transcendence and immanence, or any of those polarities, body, mind, those worked in the past to get us to keep creating anew, creating in the spirit of beauty. But then that choratic element reminds us, oh, but maybe those things have gone off because look, we're creating technology now without any of that particular spirit. And so, anyways, I'm now going back off into Khora, but Plato, right, became for me, yeah, the first exposure to the value of the both and, to the value of being both body and soul, the value of being both one and many, the value of understanding and madness, and supporting it in such a way that at each level of my life or experience in my life, I could always go back to a Platonic text and it would speak to me, right? And always ever anew, right? Like I can't tell you how many times I've read the Symposium, and then been like, oh, I thought I understood what was happening. And I know that now, right? Like when I was younger, I would kick myself for thinking, oh, I must have gotten it wrong when I read it that time. And then think that I have to keep reading. No, 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 Danny. What I love about Plato, as he says, or as he has Socrates say in the Phaedrus, is that these texts are alive, right? And so that, yes, it means that they can transform and dialogue with us, and I can transform in relationship to that text, because we're working together in much the same way I imagine Khora, that we see the lived nature of the things that we create so that we can dialogue with it and we can allow it to let us turn different directions, and the same way back that I can let Khora turn in different directions. And so it's, for me, it was the beauty of it spoke, and I hopefully heard something of it.
Amazing, amazing. It's so mysterious, in a way, how one book or another, or one relationship or another, or one opportunity or another uh, takes us into another realm,
Mm,
or we put the book down and go on and never think of it again.
yep.
It's a strange synchronicity of kind of connectivity
Hmm.
that brings a person alive under these circumstances. So I appreciate that. What I would love to hear you speak about now, Danielle, is your understanding of Diotima in the Symposium,
Ah.
because Khora is about conscious AI in the end to help self-growth, and
Mhm.
Diotima's lessons to Socrates about love have been foundational to Western civilization in many respects, and to my mind is probably the greatest treatment and exposition of love I've ever personally read or heard. And it stands the test of time for the last 2,500 years. So speak to us about love.
uh, diadema. All right. So Khora is the mother and nurse of all becoming explicitly that, right? And what I'm about to say about Diotima might shock you. Uh, First off, of course, I gravitated to that as a woman, seeing that Socrates' teacher was a woman, and more importantly, a priestess, right? Like, so a different kind of wisdom than the men in that room, right? A kind of wisdom well, I argue in various different works of Artemis, of the warrior, of the woman who walks at night, hunts, right? So that you think about philosophy as a kind of hunting and ensnaring, and she uses the word patho, right? She's persuading, so she's using in her talk with Socrates the language of seduction that relates to the world of courtesans and hetairas and sex workers, and that all of this is in her speech on Eros, right, where she's gesturing to the value not of the aristocrat Poros, right? In her myth of Eros's birth, and Eros, for all of you, is simply the Greek word for love, and that Diotima in the Symposium gives a origin story of love's parents, and Poros is plenty, like that's the god plenty, but he's drunk and he falls asleep in the garden. And then there's Pania, poverty, a beggar who's going around, much like the flute girl in the opening. She gets dismissed, right? So in the Symposium, you see all of these so-called minor characters, the enslaved, the flute girl, the opening anonymous characters, and you might initially just dismiss them as literary pieces of window dressing. But no, in this text, right, they keep coming back, right? The importance of them and the importance of seeing that Agathon and Alcibiades makes, one of the enslaved folks get him this huge cooler, like a large vat of wine, and he, quaffs his cup. And so you see all this like tension between the entitled and then those who are doing all the work, right? Those who might actually know what love is. And Socrates sees it, and Socrates tells a story about the wisdom he learned from somebody who's normally marginalized, somebody who's normally dismissed. And so, like Pania, this impoverished beggar, right, who finds her way to take the resource from this kind of entitled, drunken Poros, right, so that she can give birth to Eros. So she gives birth to life, right, to Eros. And we see, it was her scheming. She had the Poros. She had the resources to figure out how to give birth to this amazing, beautiful thing that both is ever living and dying in just the same day, right, that's always going back and forth, this kind of, this linchpin between two different extremes and worlds. That's what it means to be a human being. That's what it means to be a philosopher, is to be between these two things. That's the daimonic spiritual aspect, is to recognize, in that seemingly low, seemingly bad, that, Agathon thinks it's the enslaved. No, there's power. And that in that power, right, when we put everything in to the transcendent, that's not to do our work. We're not the divine, absolutely wise. We're the ones that keep it in our hearts, right? We string together these things. Anyways, all right, so to get back to Diotima. Diotima, right? If you read the Symposium very carefully, all of that language, all that mystery, all that stuff, I'll just put it out there, is Socrates' mother, right? That if you recognize that Socrates is a young man, and that he's confused, he doesn't have any of the prowess that he has, and then you look at the textual parallels between Diotima's speech in the Symposium and Socrates' discussion of his mother, her name is Phaenarte, and the Theaetetus, that you could see she was a midwife and a matchmaker and a devotee of Artemis, and that Plato loves to make puns and to do a lot of work with divine naming. That was a part of mystery traditions, was to do vocal etymology and play with language so that you could reveal more than one thing in one saying, right? This is the chiastic structure of mystery traditions. And that Diotima, at the end of her speech, and so keep in mind this is a theme throughout the Symposium, of naming people and giving people nicknames. And so that Diotima's character, as she's talking about the final revelation, first she's talking about the revelation of beauty, and then, oh, we can substitute the good or truth. But then the final one is virtue. And so she's saying, reveal virtue, feinarete, feinarete. So that she's actually naming herself, her real name. So that Diotima ends up being an eponym for feinarete, Socrates' mother. And so that we see in this particular speech the beauty of what we learn from our mothers, and that those ancestors, they're still alive. Those mothers are still creeping around in all the texts that we make, all the things that we create. Because the whole idea that she's getting at in the symposium is that we give birth to the immortal, right? And we can't just do it once, she says. We have to keep doing it. And so the value of birthing virtue, of birthing all of these things, become a mother, right? Become the kind of person, Socrates, that inspires people to see the immortal in the things that we create, in the things that we do. So that Socrates ultimately is doing that same work that Diotima did for him, or his mother did for him, this concrete, fleshy, lived person who inspired him and continues to inspire him throughout his life. Because he's been transformed by her wisdom and her revelation.
Beautiful, beautiful. I hadn't heard the theory that Diotima was Socrates' mother.
That's what I argue, and I do it on the basis of very analytical, textual stuff. So the way I'm talking about it now is hopefully you can see that that's the beauty of it. But if you really want to get into the nitty gritty, I'd be happy to. And so.
Yeah, no, that's just of interest. I'm also interested. One of the things that I really appreciated, because it was so provocative in the symposium about love, is many people consider love to be the ultimate virtue, shall we say, in the cosmos. God is love, but Diotima's teaching to Socrates is that even love serves beauty.
Of course, yeah.
That love is that mediating intelligence that weaves all things to become beautiful. Love to hear you talk a little bit about the relationship between love and beauty, as you understand it.
No, yeah, of course. So the beautiful is that object, right? Not in the sense of object like a thing, like a possession, right? I like the word telos, right? Like it's that purpose, right? It's that which sparks that I have to reach toward it, right? Come what may, right? I desire that, right? And I can see it, right? So like since that desire, like beauty's so beautiful that now it's expanding because of I recognize the value of the desire of the reaching, right? So that ultimately even the reaching becomes the embodied aspect of beauty, and that I can see it in you and Stanley and in Ubiquity University, right? Like I can see it in the smallest of things. That the idea in a grain of sand, right? I can see the cosmos, I can see the beautiful, and so I continue to reach for it, right? And that reaching is, I guess, the homage, right? It's the showing that I've seen her, or I've seen it. Maybe not with my eyes, but maybe with something more, right? Something bigger than my body, even bigger than my spirit, because I believe. And so this is one of the things that I love about Plato, is that we think that Plato doesn't like pistis or belief or faith. We think, it's all about knowledge. But if you read, the divided line, you have to begin, or if you, with the Phaedo, this is a charming argument, he says, you have to begin with that faith. And so for me, beauty and the love of it speaks to the power of a kind of faith and hope that are fundamentally the most beautiful thing about being human, and that it's not something lacking in knowing, but it's the very source of why it is that we try to know anything at all. And so, yeah, I think the whole process, I think you think of beauty as something exterior to yourself at first, right? And you go towards it, right? As if it's a lover. But what beauty does is ultimately comes back within, making that very desire for the outside internal and connected, so that it becomes, to get into the Plato's mathematics, that movement from the point to the line, and then the line to the figure, and then the figure to the dynamism of, yeah, the embodied world.
Hmm. Hmm. Well, thank you. Thank you for that. And let's turn to the Republic.
Mm.
And I'd love to ask your comment as a Platonic scholar, given his critique of democracy. What would, in your view, be a Platonic critique of current, say, American politics in relationship to his notions of the philosopher king and so forth? What would
Well,
Plato say about Donald Trump?
oh God. All right. So first off,
That's
for
not a
me,
trick question.
oh, I know, I know. No, because we could talk about book nine, till the cows come home, and the tyrant, and I mean, I don't want to put names to any tyrant, but the tyrant, dreams about, you know, sleeping with his mom, but then also wants to do it in reality. And so basically, the tyrant is anybody who just wants to do what they want when they want, and simply for the sake of they can, right? There's no reason for their actions. They just want to exert power and control the masses, but they have no friends. So they're always going to be worried and anxious. They have no sense of relation. And so they're going to sense that the world is meaningless. And so they're going to continue to lash out in a variety of ways. And they so-called demos, or the democracy, has to suffer under it. And so I do think Plato was highly prophetic in the sense of recognizing that's the nature of the tyrant. And keep in mind, guys, the tyrant is born from a democracy, because Plato's criticisms of democracy are not what we think they are, right? Because first off, the Republic is not primarily a political text. That's one of the great misreadings of the Republic. Primarily, it is an analogy of the soul. Now, he's doing political work, right? Because, of course, when you are working on your soul, you cannot help but become an agent that is pushing against the political, that the political world wants to act as if it is the be all end all. It is the most naturalized thing. Obviously, we need politics. Obviously, we need government. But if you start working on your soul, turning to that psychic life, as Plato wants you to do in the Republic, develop those virtues, put them into harmony, see that there are parts of yourself, that there is an epithumos, or gut appetite. There's a thumos, there's a spirited element, and that spirit, from that spirited element, right, grows the philosopher kings and queens, right? As I just said a few minutes ago, those philosopher kings and queens, they're the strongest warriors, right? So that reason suddenly, that's right, it is part of fighting for the value of this individual soul and its care and caring for it. And you need both the feminine and the masculine, and they need to be integrated in such a way as to create the kind of human being that knows that the political shouldn't be ruling, but rather the psychic, or the embodied individual human being, and that what really matters is how it is that you care for your soul, so that you can care for others and actually have a kind of harmony that isn't about controlling your appetites or controlling your spirit, but about working with them and having a harmonious relationship, as is advanced in book 4 of the Republic. And so I say that, but if we go back into the world of the political is going to create conditions where people don't see the value of philosophy. All they see is that philosophy is good at arguing. Here I am, my car salesman self, right? I have all sorts of skills that could, if I use them in certain ways, make me a business person or a CEO. I could become a tyrant because all the things of philosophy. So in book 5, he describes philosophy as have been abandoned by the right people in a democracy, because a democracy is not going to create conditions where people can become rebellious against the political. And so philosophy is abandoned in book 5, and like a bride says, and then some bald person who, snivelly, like, gets released from prison, and his boss has this bride philosophy. You want her? And so in a democracy, philosophy is going to be taken up by the sophists, right? By the technicians, and try to reduce everything to simply the technician or simply winning arguments. And so everything is getting drained of its restorative power, its beauty. There is no truth anymore. There is no beauty anymore, because the education systems reinforce nihilism, despair, meaninglessness. And so why does the tyrant come from a democracy? Well, because nobody believes anything anymore. Nobody cares. Nobody sees the point
Yep.
of developing and thinking and going inwards and imagining and dreaming big, because we haven't provided any of those tools. Purposely so, if all you believe in is the political, right? If you believe, oh, it's only going to be when we enact a law or we elect this person that finally our public schools will start reading Plato again. No, right? That's putting your power elsewhere, right? That's gonna say, okay, yeah, you're saying you're okay with letting this monolithic who knows what. We all know that the political world is corrupt, but we keep putting our power into it versus no, creating things like I think you guys have done here at Ubiquity, other worlds where we can give and find the resources that we need. And so for me, Plato, and I think the philosophical tradition, is asking that exact same question you just asked me, right? What's your utopia? Imagine it, right? Create it, right? And know that each one of us are invited to do that, and not just to live in the whim of whatever the political, whether it be a democracy or a tyranny or an aristocrat, that would be complacent, and that would mean that you aren't learning from the world around you.
Thank you. Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you. Final question from Kim Kerrigan. She's asking a very interesting question about beauty, just to circle back
Mhm.
as we close. Does beauty always lead to truth? And does beauty have thorns like a rose?
Mhm.
Thank you,
No,
Kim. That's a great question.
it, for me, that's a fundamental part of it, right? Is that when you say, like, go back to the very thing that inspired me, that I both know and do not know. On the surface of things, you would say, "Oh, doesn't that taint your knowing? Doesn't isn't that a thorn in your knowing, your ignorance? Isn't that something ugly? Shouldn't you get rid of that not knowing, that perplexity and that confusion? Shouldn't you get rid of your madness? Shouldn't you get rid, like all of these things that we typically think are thorns, right? Like, that's what Platonism is showing you, is that no, those thorns, God, they're protective of the flower. She grew in such a way that she learned to create spikes and give herself the ammunition to fight against whatever may pluck her. And so that there are no thorns. There's just beautiful growths of various different things. And the ability to see that even in the most rotten thing, that's the Platonic life. That yes, there are thorns. There is the ugly in the beautiful. That bride philosophy, she can turn into a tyrant, right? If wielded, right? You think about all those people in the political world who are very good at arguing, very good at swaying and producing inspiration in others, but they're not wielding it for the sake of seeing how the thorn is beautiful. They're wielding it just for themselves. And so, yeah, that's I think one of the I don't know, vision, diatema, to go back to her, of the beautiful and the beautiful is If I can see beauty in the thorn or in the ugly, then it means I must be seeing it myself and all the things that I hate about myself. Uh, and so now real empathy for the person in front of me exists.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Danielle. This has been fascinating, just absolutely fascinating.
Well,
We're going to bring this to a close for now, everyone, so Danielle can join the after chat. She has a hard stop in about 25 minutes.
unfortunately, sorry.
Um, so you can join her. You'll see the link in the chat box. Stan just put it in, and you receive the link to the after chat in your Zoom reminders for today. And then tomorrow, we're going to go from Platonic philosophy to the outermost reaches of modern physics with a physicist that has come up with a way to understand ultimate reality that I think everyone's going to find absolutely fascinating. So that'll be tomorrow on Humanity Rising. Thank you, Danielle.
Thank you again for having
Wonderful to
me.
have you with us, and we'll see you in the after chat. Thanks, everyone. See you tomorrow. Bye for now.